is a place that hunts the curious. It holds them 1 inch from understanding, forever, so they can never finish the thought that would end them. The woman who runs it keeps her own husband in its deepest room. She calls it saving him. 15 months after the world woke knowing the word, there was one building that had not given up. They called it the ward. Everywhere else, people had learned to keep small, to stop reaching for the bottom of any question, because at the bottom of every question the word was waiting. Understanding it was fatal. Whoever worked out what it meant was found the next morning. Calm, unmarked, gone. The world called it a plague and did the only thing it knew how to do. It stopped thinking and waited to be spared. The ward called it a disease with a cure, and it went looking for the ones who were close. It hunted the curious, the ones who still asked why, and brought them in, not to punish them, its director would tell you, but to save them. It held them at the very edge of understanding and would not let them fall. You held a mind back the way you hold a breath. Sedatives to slow it, noise to crowd it. Small bright distractions around the clock, so the thought could never quite finish forming. In the monitored rooms they murmured, and reached and never arrived. Almost. Always almost. The instruments recorded the approach, on the theory that a mind studied in that last inch might teach them to close the inch forever and make people safe to wonder again. Sometimes one slipped through anyway, overnight, despite everything. And in the morning they would find them the way the whole world found its understanders, calm, unmarked, at peace. That same strange stillness settled over the face. The staff hated those mornings. There was a word in the logs for a subject who could no longer be held. They wrote, released. The director's name was Dr. Iris Vale. She had built the protocol. Every dosage, every sealed door had come out of her patient. Brilliant refusal to accept that a thing could not be beaten if you only understood it well enough. She never drifted, never tilted her head at a puzzle the way the lost ones did. She was the safest mind in the building. That was why they had given it to her. They did not know about the room at the end of the East Hall, the one on no schedule, that she attended herself. After the shifts changed, with the observation slot closed. Theo was in that room. He had been in it for 14 months. He was her husband. It had been the oldest joke between them, that she took the world apart to see how it worked, and he simply loved that it worked at all. She defined things. He wondered at them. When she got too certain, too closed, he would lean in with that maddening warmth and ask the question that ran the whole length of their marriage. Aren't you curious, Iris? As if curiosity were a door he was always, gently, holding open for her. He had been one of the early ones to get close. In the second week, before the protocol, when she was only a frightened woman with access to sedatives and a theory, she had put him under rather than let him fall. She told herself it was one night, then a week. Then she built an institution around the lie, so she would never have to call it what it was. Now he lay in the gray light and reached, even this deep under. Some part of him was always reaching, his hand rising toward nothing, his mouth shaping the front of a sentence he had started the morning she took him, and had been trying to finish. Ever since, anyone else would have called it damage. Iris told herself the same. She held the reaching hand down against the blanket, gently, and did not let herself hear what the sentence was trying to become. The order came on a Tuesday. The world had stopped believing in a cure. You cannot fund a war against understanding in a civilization that has quietly decided never to understand anything again. The ward was to be decommissioned. The subjects were to be processed and released. Released. There it was, the word from the logs, in clean official type, meaning exactly what it had always secretly meant. Iris read it twice. Somewhere in the building were 41 held minds that would now be let go, and in a room at the end of the East Hall was the one she had built the whole world to keep. She had days, not weeks, days before the men with clipboards came to open every door she had spent 14 months holding shut. So she did what she had always done. She reached for control. She could not stop the decommission, but she could hide one subject from it. She struck Theo from the manifest and moved him, in the dead hours, to a storeroom she could keep herself. And to hold him safe through the chaos of a closing building, she raised his protocol, more sedative, deeper dark. A mind held now not at arm's length from the word but pressed flat, so far from finishing a thought that finishing was no longer even a danger. It worked. That was the unbearable part. The reaching stopped. The hand lay quiet. The mouth gave up its unfinished sentence, at last. She had wanted him to stop reaching for 14 months. And now that he had, she looked at what was left and understood that she had saved nothing. She had only pushed the man she loved deeper into the dark. And the deeper she pushed, the less of him came back up to meet her. You could not hold a person at the threshold. You could only hold less and less of them, and call the emptying out survival. On the third night, Subject 9 understood. He had been the ward's great near success, kept a hair's breadth from the edge for 8 months on the heaviest protocol in the building. If the theory was true, he was the one it could never lose. They lost him overnight, on full sedation, every instrument running. The machines recorded the whole approach and could not stop it. In the end, the mind simply went where it had always been going. Iris came down before they took him. For 4 years, she had told herself a clean, useful thing, that understanding was an execution, that the word reached into a person and switched them off, and the peace on their faces was only the slack of the dead. She made herself look the way a scientist looks, and she could not make the face fit the theory. It was not switched off. It was the face of a man who had carried something impossibly heavy for a very long time and had finally been allowed to set it down. She went back up to the deep undershape of her husband, and for the first time in 14 months she was no longer sure which of them was the one being kept alive. She should have left him under. She meant to, but she sat through the small hours with her theory coming apart in her hands, and some part of her that was still a wife and not a warden needed, just once, to hear his voice before the men with clipboards came. So she lowered the protocol, just enough, just for a little while. He came up slowly. His eyes found her, and for the first time in 14 months, they were his eyes, tired, kind, entirely unafraid. "There you are," he said. She could not answer. "Iris," he said. His hand turned over under hers, and this time it did not reach past her. It held on. "You have to stop. I'm keeping you safe," she said. "I'm going to fix this. I only need more time. I've had 14 months of the thing you're keeping me from." He was gentle with her, the way he had always been gentlest when she was most wrong. "It isn't what you think, love. It doesn't hurt. It's the opposite. I've been standing at a door this whole time with you holding my arm, and I stopped being afraid of it a long time ago. You're the one who's still afraid. If you go, I lose you," she said. "You lost me the day you decided to keep me." He said it without any cruelty at all, which was how she knew it was true. "This isn't me leaving, but I can't reach it while you hold me here, and you can't come to it while your hands are full of holding me." His thumb moved once across her knuckles, the oldest gesture he had. "So, aren't you curious, Iris, after all of it? Aren't you the littlest bit curious what it is?" The question from the whole length of their marriage, the door he had always held open, asked one last time, from the edge of the only door that had ever mattered. She did not answer him. But the answer arrived anyway. Not as a thought she chose, but as one that finally, after 14 months, finished itself. The ward was not a hospital. It never had been. It was a prison. She had built it for the one act left in the world that was not a crime at all, for the act of understanding. And she had filled it with people caught in the last inch before peace, and held them there, in the dark, in the almost, for as long as their bodies could bear it, and she had called it care. Every subject she had ever saved, she had kept from the only open door in a locked world. Understanding had never been the disease. Her refusal to let go, given a building, a budget, and 41 beds, was the disease. She was not the cure. She was the thing the cure was needed for. She stood up, and she began, quietly, to let go. She went from room to room through the emptying building and did the one thing the ward had been built to prevent. She did not drive anyone through any door. The door that mattered had never been one you could push a person through. She only stopped holding them back. She lowered the protocols she had raised. She silenced the bright, crowding noise. All through the building she took her hand off the arm of every held mind and let each of them stand, at last, in front of their own last question and decide for themselves. Then she went back to the storeroom and she sat down beside her husband, and she stopped keeping him. She let the dark lift off him. She let the fog thin. She felt his hand come alive under hers and begin, without fear, to reach again. And this time she did not press it down. This time she laced her fingers into it. She leaned close in the warming light, and she let herself do the thing she had forbidden the whole world and herself for 14 months. She let herself be still. She let herself tilt her head, just slightly, toward the door he had always held open. "Aren't you curious?" she thought. And for the first time in her life, she let herself want to know. So let me ask you, if the only way to keep someone you love was to hold them forever, 1 inch short of peace, would you keep them? Or would you open your hand and lose them and call that the love? Tell me below. New tales every Tuesday and Friday. Subscribe so the next one finds you.